let's talk a little bit about it, right? So what are some of the programs that are available to our youngest learners in Chicago for summer?
Well, in CPS, we have two main programs. One program is for preview to pre-K. That's for students who are entering pre-K in the fall. And it's really designed to be an orientation program to their school. They get to meet their teacher. They get to be in their new classrooms. They get to make new friends. And they also get to learn. They get to start learning all of these early literacy and early math and social emotional skills so that when you walk into their classroom in the fall, it feels like they've been there forever. And we really are excited that it's a 4-week program. It's 4 days a week, and it's 5 hours a day. And so we really just encourage families to take advantage of this program. It's called Preview to Pre-K.
School year begins in the fall, but the transition to pre-K begins in the summer. And we are joined today by Rachel Mayo, who works at Chicago Public Schools, to talk all things summer and all things summer transitions for our youngest learners. Rachel, so grateful to have you here today. Can we start with you just telling us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. So my name is Rachel Mayo. Currently, I'm the P2 manager in the Office of Early Childhood. But before that, I was a pre-K teacher and a pre-K director. And so just really excited to be here to talk all things pre-K in the summer.
And I suspect with having those types of roles, you have a lot of exposure and experience to helping families and teachers navigate summer programming.
Yeah, absolutely. And we really encourage the summer is such a great time to get ready for the fall. There's so many different ways to do that, and we're excited to dive into those today.
Well, let's talk a little bit about it, right? So what are some of the programs that are available to our youngest learners in Chicago for summer?
Well, in CPS, we have two main programs. One program is for preview to pre-K. That's for students who are entering pre-K in the fall. And it's really designed to be an orientation program to their school. They get to meet their teacher. They get to be in their new classrooms. They get to make new friends. And they also get to learn. They get to start learning all of these early literacy and early math and social emotional skills so that when you walk into their classroom in the fall, it feels like they've been there forever. And we really are excited that it's a 4-week program. It's 4 days a week, and it's 5 hours a day. And so we really just encourage families to take advantage of this program. It's called Preview to Pre-K.
Now, Rachel, it's not at every school, right?
No, unfortunately, it's not at every school, and students can only participate at their local school if their local school is offering this program. If they're not offering this program, that's okay. There are other options in the city of Chicago. We encourage families to reach out to their local community-based organizations. Some schools may also offer out of school time as well. And so we just encourage families when they're registering, when they're coming in to enroll in their early learning, to ask the school, ask them what's available, and we can always support from there.
So you talked about two programs at Chicago. What's the other one?
The other one is actually for students entering kindergarten. It's called Kickoff to Kindergarten. And this is really designed to accelerate students so that they're really ready to start kindergarten in the fall. It's similar to Preview to Pre-K in that it's the same dates and the same times. But this is even really to get a jump start on the academic piece and really make sure that students walk into kindergarten day one, ready to build those really strong foundations.
And this is still in their school where they're going to be going to kindergarten, so they'll be able to get some of the firsthand experience with some of those potential teachers or office staff or custodial staff too. Great. Oh, that's great.
Really build those relationships so that when they walk in the first day of school, they're not so nervous and they're not so worried about what will happen. They have really already built those relationships, and so they can feel comfortable to dive right into their learning.
And these are what? How much do they cost?
They are free.
Free 99. That's what we love. Yes. No, families, please. Take advantage of this free 99 in 4 weeks in the summer where they get, opportunity to be with their potential school members, teachers, custodial staff, office people. So to begin to make those early connections and maybe even some of the kids that will be in their own classroom. So that's another added bonus.
Absolutely.
So as we're thinking about summer, talk a little bit about why this transition is so important and why this is such a good opportunity for families to kind of take advantage of.
So what we know about young learners is that their brains are the most able to grow and change when they're under the age of 5. And so we are so excited to provide these opportunities along with other options available in the city of Chicago, because this is really the time that their brain is growing so much, and they're growing socially, they're growing emotionally, they're growing academically. And it's just such a great time to take advantage of in that transition, so that when it's time for the fall, it doesn't feel like such a difference from their summer routines to their fall routines. It's really, we think about it like a bridge. How do you bridge between what's happening in the summer and what's happening in the fall, so that students feel comfortable and confident?
And I'm going to tell you, I had the opportunity at the beginning of this school year to go into classrooms on the first week of school. And it was amazing to see what those kids were able to do.
Yeah.
Just because they had that exposure to summer. And some might say, oh, it's 4 weeks. What can they do in 4 weeks? But I will tell you, it is night and day. Like generally, when you think of the first, day of school, 2 days of school, what do you see? Crying.
All the tears.
Crying, all the tears, separation anxiety. But when I tell you, I went to several schools that had summer programming. Mm-hmm. Students were on task. They were sitting in their groups. They were, comfortable in their space. They knew what to do. And so summer is such an important time. And I think that's why we prioritize it in the district, to make sure that there are summer opportunities. So we talked a little bit about what summer opportunities are available within the district. Are there other summer programs that you know about? I know you may not be well-versed on all that's happening in Chicago, but what are some of the others?
Yeah, many community-based organizations offer summer programming. Many park districts do. And there are also different events. If a full-time program isn't the right fit for your family, many museums, many other cultural institutions in Chicago also have free days during the summer. So we really encourage families to try to figure out what's the best fit for them and explore their options from them.
Yeah, no. And, it's quite challenging to try to get summer, let me tell you, because, when Tyler was little, I think I almost slept on the phone trying to get her into the park district, because, you gotta try to time it right,
Yes.
to get in there. But I also love what you said about like being in Chicago. There's so much that you can expose your child to, and you can be your child's summer transition teacher,
Mm-hmm.
for like taking them to the park and taking them to the museum and taking them to the zoo and all of these fun spaces that also have educational spaces for children to learn. And let's not forget about the public libraries and all of the wonderful programming that they have for students in the summer. I think there's even some reading programs that are aligned to CPS that we can also share with families as well.
Yep. I think every moment is an opportunity for families to support their young children's learning. Even if you're at the playground, you can talk about the different pieces of the slides. You can ask your child, which do you think will go faster, if we slide down the slide or if we walk down the slide? Yeah. And then ask them, how do you know, to really start building those critical thinking skills in that critical transition time. And
it's all about building on that curiosity of our young learners. They're already curious about the world
100%.
around them. You could spend, 15, 20, 30 minutes just talking about trees and looking at one particular tree on a walk right outside your house and, use that as an opportunity to learn this summer.
Absolutely.
So essentially, Rachel, I think what I'm hearing from you is that whether children are in a structured environment or if they're at home and you're exploring your neighborhood, it's really about easing them into learning, right? So let's take a moment and think about what's one or two routines that parents can do that can really make a difference and set their child up to be successful to start school in the fall.
I think the biggest thing is consistency. Really making sure that as much as you can, and of course life happens, but as much as you can, that routines are consistent. So for example, maybe the going to bed routine, right? You're making sure that every time your child goes to bed, they're doing the same things in the same order. So maybe first they're taking a bath, then they're brushing their teeth, then you're reading a story with them, and then they're going to bed. practicing those transitions, even though as grown-ups, it doesn't seem like a transition to us, navigating between those different activities and being able to start an activity, stop an activity, and move on to the next activity will really help set them up for success in school when all day long they're going to be asked, okay, now it's time to read a book. Now it's time to work in small groups. Now it's time to play in centers. They're going to have to transition between all those different things. So the more consistent those routines can be, the more it will be helpful.
I love that. And I love that, it starts at the home, right? Because I always say, we here in this community of family, we are the child's first teacher, right? And so I think having parents understand, they know it's important to do things in order, right? But I think just having the way you just laid it out to say, it's the consistency of that. And really for kids, I'm transferring that into what I do when I'm at school, right? I think that's so critical. What else should parents be thinking about or trying? I know routines is important, the consistency important. Is there anything else they should be thinking about?
Absolutely. I think parents should think about their everyday experiences. How can they turn those into learning moments? So, of course, reading with your child is a critical activity. Research says that's one of the most predicting things of your child's success in schools, and really making sure that they have that time to read with you. I think some other things are just when you go to the grocery store, have your child count how many coins are in your hand. They don't have to get it exactly right, but to start having them practice those everyday skills in everyday situations, because you're their first teacher as a parent, and they will really start to build some of those early math and early literacy skills.
I think one of the things I did and it started with the summer with Tyler when we used to go on like little day trips. I would do I Spy.
That's a good one.
Why did I start that game? I wanted to play it. And then when I was done, I wanted to stop. Like I was done. But no. She was I Spying all. I'm like, I don't want to spy no more. I'm tired of spying. I'll see nothing else. So, but even though that's good, it's a fun way to bring in whether colors, shapes, objects or whatnot. Another thing I used to do with her, which I still like it. We would cut out like everyday things, like Cheerios or cornflakes or Kraft macaroni and cheese, whatever. I'm naming all food. Wait, I got some other stuff in my house, but you know what I'm saying? Like lights or whatever. Yeah. But we would label all that and have her start to read that so that if she did go to summer program and if she went to school, she would start to be able to recall some words and some things. So if things showed up in classroom spaces, she wasn't, unfamiliar or was able to bring in that prior knowledge.
And you don't even need anything. You don't need anything to help your child learn. Even using big words with your child, something that we might not think that they would understand. I remember one of my former students' parents came in and she said, Miss Rachel, what are you teaching my daughter? She's using words like dehydrated and she's using words like frustrated. Why is she telling me that she's dehydrated and frustrated? But what we know is that using that vocabulary with your child can really help them become a reader and a writer as well. So you really don't need anything to any physical materials to even help your child learn.
I know one of the words that I taught my pre-K classroom, I couldn't think if it was pre-K or kindergarten, but it was magenta. They were like, that's not pink, that's magenta. I was like, yes, magenta. Come on through. But yeah, so great. Rachel, a lot of times we hear families from families who are a little bit apprehensive or nervous, right? Because maybe their child stayed at home with grandma or with auntie or whoever and did not have an opportunity to have formal pre-K experience. And now they're put in this situation with others who may have transitioned from either private school or some type of formal structure. As a teacher, can you talk about, like, what did you notice in your classrooms if you saw that? And then, like, how did you support the child or even the family around that?
Yeah, the first 4 to 6 weeks of school is all about routines and procedures. And so we really take the time, teachers take the time at the beginning of the year to make sure every child knows what to do, regardless of if they've had a previous formal learning experience or not. And sometimes the ones that have, they're the leaders in the classroom at first, and they help bring other children along. So they may already know the routine for using the bathroom, or they may already know the routine for putting away the materials, and they're going to teach the other children. And teachers really work to support those interactions where children are supporting each other to learn. And so I would say to families, it's okay. We want you here. We're going to help your child adjust, and they will adjust. Sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it takes less time, but eventually they will adjust.
Okay, good. Because I know, a lot of new mothers, who may not have a lot of support, which is why we come to the circle, because we are a village that helps and supports each other. And we're a place where families can come to get information. So I'm glad you addressed that, because I know I could feel some families feeling a little bit anxious about whether or not to put their child in a summer program, and given that they may not have had exposure to previous pre-K experience.
And summer's a great time to do that, especially if you're nervous, because it's not as many hours a day as during the school year. So you can kind of dip your toe in, spend a couple hours apart from your child, and then get them right back. And it's kind of a building block to what it'll feel like in the fall.
No, I love that. I love them thinking about summer as that little transitional period to get pre-exposed to school and give them a good head start. Yeah. So Rachel, we have a game that we play here called Red Light, Green Light.
Okay.
Probably a childhood game. I'm sure you probably played it.
Yep.
And what it helps us do here in the circle is really demystify information that may or may not be true for families.
Okay.
And so I have these paddles.
Okay.
I'll put a set in front of you, and I'll have a set.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask a question. And if the question is correct, we hold up the green.
Okay.
If it's incorrect, we hold up the red.
Okay.
And we demystify. We say what's not true, what's true.
Okay.
And then if we're not so sure, we hold up the yellow, and then we give more clarifying information.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you some questions, and we're each going to hold our paddle up to what we think.
I hope we agree.
I do too, but we'll see. Well, I did mess up one time, so so we'll see what happens. All right. So first question is, we hear from a lot of families that either they've been reaching out to schools or agencies or community programs, and they haven't heard anything. And it's summer, shortly school will be in the fall. So they're sort of thinking, should I just wait until the first day of school and figure it out? Or if I should just do nothing?
Definite red light for me. I think families, we know it's hard to get in touch with schools in the summer sometimes and with other organizations because it's the summer. But we encourage you to keep trying. And the morning is usually the best times for school. If you can call before 12 o'clock, oftentimes there are staff there. And if they're not, maybe they're not there on Mondays, but maybe they're there on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So we encourage you to keep calling, keep emailing. You can always call the Chicago Early Learning Hotline to also help you get an answer to some of your questions.
Yeah, I would agree, because there's a lot of construction that usually takes place. There's a lot of cleaning that takes place in schools. And so folks are in different parts of buildings. Certain parts of buildings are closed down. And so I recommend calling definitely, or emailing even.
Sure.
And leaving a voicemail, because sometimes maybe if they're in one part, they may be checking. So definitely do not wait. We want to get connected to schools as soon as possible.
Sure.
All right. So another one we hear from families is about reading. And I know you kind of alluded to this and talked through this. Families ask reading books and to my child, whether it's daily, is a help.
Now, it doesn't have to be for 2 hours a day. You can read with your child for 5 minutes a day, and that makes a really meaningful difference. So even if before they go to bed or when you're waiting at the grocery store, anytime you can for even just 5 minutes will really, really help.
And it's okay if it's the same book, right?
Absolutely.
So it could be the same book for the whole week.
Mm-hmm. In school, we read books over and over and over again because every time you read, you learn something new. And so families can share that approach as well.
And then children also start to recognize words and other texts. And
they can start to read the book to you.
Exactly. And that's what you really want. You want them to feel so comfortable with it so that they start to internalize it and can start telling it to you, because that builds their confidence too as a reader. I remember when Tyler used to be like, and I love that she was tracking when she was reading, but she used to always play teacher.
Yes.
Mommy, I'm the teacher. I'm the teacher. I'm like, okay, yes, you are. So as families start to think about school, we get questions about separation anxiety. And many families feel like there's not anything that they can do to ease their child's anxiety around separating from them when they go to school.
I put a yellow for that one because there are tons of things that you can do, and your child might still be nervous. It's okay to be nervous before the first day of school, but there are definitely things you can do. You can practice as if they were going to school. You can have them get dressed. You can walk to the school with them, or however you get to school with them. You can practice that whole routine. You can also have them bring things with them if they get a little nervous and they miss you. So maybe it's a picture of you and your family that they can put in their pocket or in their cubby. There are lots of things that families can do to ease that transition.
I agree. And I think even with doing those things, they still may have anxiety, right? So they still may have anxiety, but those things will help ease it, could potentially help ease it. So that's why I kind of went a little bit of red there, because I feel like they still may have it because it's perfectly normal. It's a new situation. It's a new setting, but doing some of those things could help mitigate it, but they still might feel it, you know? Mm-hmm. But I think for families, I would encourage you to do some of those things, to find ways of whatever makes them feel comfortable, whatever makes them feel, or think about home, or think about something that they really love, or a pet, or a memory, or something like that helps lessen the anxiety.
And there are great books out there that talk about how to transition from home to school. So The Kissing Hand is a great book about a baby raccoon and its family and how it has to leave the family to go to school. And so there's lots of books at the library too, and the librarians would love to help you find some books that will help.
And one of the things I did too with Tyler is we went to the school a couple times before she was able to go, and we practiced. Mm-hmm. So we practiced, although, you know, I did all this and was thinking she was going to, you know, act this whole fool. And she didn't. Okay. She was like, okay, Mom, like, bye. You know, and I'm sitting here like, I'm lingering. Mm-hmm. I'm standing around. I'm like, I'm waiting. And I'm like, okay, you can go. She's fine.
Sometimes it's harder for the parent than the child. And we encourage you on that first day to, you know, say goodbye and then to be on your way, because sometimes being there for too long can actually harm more than it helps.
And sometimes maybe it's us that need that picture.
Oh, 1,000%.
We need that barrette, or we need something from them, because they're fine. Kids are so resilient. They're not even thinking about us half the time.
Yeah. By the end of the first day or the second day, most children are usually good to go.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, Rachel. So we end every podcast with a take-home folder for families. And it gives like updates. It'll give like an action item for them to do, a reminder, and it'll give them some homework. So 3 things: homework, reminder, action item. But before we talk about that, let's talk about pre-K take-home folders or pre-K homework. What should be in there?
Well, let me start with what should not be in there.
Okay.
You may think you'll see a worksheet, but we really don't want to see a worksheet. What we know about worksheets and young children is that they don't actually help young children learn. It helps us as adults, but it doesn't necessarily help young children. I remember one of my students, she had transitioned to kindergarten, and I went to visit her in kindergarten, and she was working on a worksheet, and I said, "What are you writing?" And she was tracing some numbers. She said, "I don't know, I'm just writing." I said, "Oh, okay."
She was like, Your guess is as good as mine.
She had no clue what number she was writing or what letter she was writing.
But she was writing,
which is great, but we want to see more purposeful, more
Yes.
interactive engagement. And so many pre-K teachers have different ways of going about that. But the one thing we probably don't want to see is those worksheets.
I agree. I mean, I know people mean well, and I think to your point, what is the purpose? Like, what are we trying? Is it that we want them to count? Is it that we want them to work on fine motor skills? Like, what is it that we want them to do? And let's find a more engaging, interactive, purposeful way for them to do it.
Yep.
It can still be rigorous, guys. I know some people feel like it's not rigor if it's not in a workbook or a stapled, packet. No. You can learn alphabet outside of color sheets and ditto sheets, right? And so I think, I think there's an opportunity for us as educators to really educate families around what real work at home, and I don't even want to say homework, but work at home should look like for our youngest learners. And it's really a lot of what we already talked about today. It's those informal conversations. It's really about reading. It's really about, using the environment around you to kind of help bring in different concepts or skills to children in a fun, authentic, meaningful way.
I think about it when I was thinking about my student. Is it more meaningful for her to trace the number 4, or could she count the number of cereal that she has and write down how many she had in total, right? It's all about that engaging piece that you were talking about. She's much more likely to remember it and retain it if she's actually doing something as opposed to just doing a worksheet.
Or go and find 4 blue things,
Absolutely.
right, in the house. Yep. You can get counting, you can get sorting, you can get even measurement out of that.
And writing.
Writing, right? And so I think, I just think we have to think about that as educators and how we help to educate families around that. Because sometimes I think families are thinking that might be what they need to have.
Yes.
Right?
If they don't see a worksheet, then they're not learning. But we want to make sure even if you don't see a worksheet, they are learning, and there's lots of ways to do that.
And a lot of that can happen if you have good summer programming where they can highlight some of those things. In summer, because it's a less stressful time, it may be a good opportunity to talk to teachers about that and to talk to teachers about what are some of the things that I can do at home.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're going to jump into our take-home pack. I think I might let you give the homework assignment today, and I will give the action item and the reminders.
Okay.
All right, Rachel, so you're thinking about homework.
Yep.
Okay, do you have homework for our village here in the circle?
Absolutely. My homework for the village in the circle would be to go online and explore some options for summer for your child. Maybe that's their school that they're attending in the fall. Maybe that's a park district program. Maybe that's a program at the library, or maybe that's just somewhere in the city of Chicago that you want to be sure to take them this summer. But go online, explore, see what options are out.
And we're so lucky to live in Chicago because there's so many great things to do. Yes. All right, so that's good homework. I think, my reminder for them is to start to think about what is one consistent thing,
that's a good one. Yep.
That you can start to establish consistency around. So whether that is going to bed at a certain time, establishing some nighttime routine, or waking up at a specific time in the morning, or reading a book at a certain time during the day. So just a reminder to start one routine and start small and be consistent. And then I think I would love for them to, another action item would be to share this podcast with families who may be thinking about and even unsure of where they could put their child in the summer. What are some things to do with their child in the summer? Because one thing we know is that learning can happen anywhere at any time with their child. So please take an opportunity to help others figure out what's the right learning path for their child. Until next time, remember, Summer isn't just the wait, it's the warm up. And we got you here in the circle. See you next time.